All right, everybody. Hello. So you got Tim Imholt again, along with Bill Sylvie, the Dungeon Delver. I will put a link to his YouTube page in the description to this, and we're going to talk about Owlbear today. And the reason I brought Bill on is Bill's been plays first edition kind of exclusively. He will play later editions, but he's one of the best first edition DMs that are out there running live streams that only play first edition. The best live stream on YouTube for that particular edition. Tuesday nights, Monday nights, I think you do first E also.
I play private game on Monday nights. That's on stream. But if you want
Okay.
to watch, if you want to see first edition AD&D played and ask questions, it's not just a museum piece where you just kind of sit and stare for a couple of hours.
Mhm.
You can check out my channel, and we play 2 hours a night, first edition AD&D.
Right. And Friday nights is Gamma World. So if you want to see that, check that out too.
That is correct.
But we're not talking about any of that today. We're talking about Owlbear and how Owlbear has evolved over the years. So we all see a lot of discussion about how they're changing things inside D&D, how Hasbro or Wizards of the Coast is evolving the game in different ways. And sometimes those evolutions are worthwhile. Some of them I look at and go, I don't understand. Some of it, I think they had a plan. Some of it, I think they're just making stuff up as they go along. And some of it's good, some of it's bad, some of it is just confusing. So Owlbear is one that Bill used to kill off one of my characters in a first edition game the other night. I did it to myself because I literally poked the bear, which was never a good idea, especially a bear that can hug you to death. So I was going to put it into an adventure I was going to DM for my kids. So I looked it up in the fifth edition book because they're playing fifth edition, and I found something interesting. So I'm going to walk through a few things with owlbear that has changed over the years. And you know, owlbear is one of those creatures we all talk about, but you don't, it's like mimic. Everybody loves to talk about it. I'm not sure how often you actually see it, but here it is. Here's owlbear in the first edition, owlbear in the fifth edition. And what I'm noticing is he's losing some abilities. And in this case, he forgot how to hug. Um, Maybe he just needs a few more hugs. Maybe that's a bad idea. But what is an owlbear? Well, what can you say about it? Well, I found this in the fifth edition book. The only good thing about owlbears is that the wizard who created them is probably dead, which is a very interesting thing to do, to say. They were probably created by some wizard going through some sort of weird experiment, and out pops an owlbear. Uh, these three pictures are the ones I could find about. There's lots of pictures of owlbears out there, but these three were in different editions over the years. The one on the left was in first through third edition. Center is fourth edition. The one on the right is fifth. Um, Images are not really why we're here today. This is. So when I started digging into the differences in between owlbear originally in my third edition monster manual versus my fifth edition monster manual, and I have both, I found some differences and I was kind of surprised. Uh, One is, and I don't understand this, Bill, maybe you can help me out. I know they changed armor class quite a lot to go to the later editions, but going from fifth class to armor class 5 to armor class 13 seems like a interesting choice. Um, I can't understand why they went to it. Those two things don't seem equal to me. There's something seems off a bit. I know armor class has been redone, but it still seems a little off. What do you think,
Well,
sir?
so it's my understanding, understand viewers out there who only play fifth edition. I'm a AD&D, OD&D, and yes, occasionally basic D&D Neanderthal, and lower is better in armor class for reasons that we can discuss in a different video. But armor class 5 is the equivalent, if I'm not mistaken, of armor class 15. Armor class 13 is the equivalent of armor class 7. So they weakened them somewhat. They made their hides less tough. And I think they did that on the back end because if we look at the hit dice, now for the uninitiated, hit dice is a D8 roll in uh, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons first edition to determine how many hit points a monster has. As you can see, it's laid out in fifth edition here as a D10 roll. And the 5+2 basically is you roll 5 8-sided dice and then add 2 to the score. Here in fifth edition, they roll seven 10-sided dice and add 21 to the roll. So while they made him easier to hit, they made him overall harder to kill by making him physically hardier,
Mhm.
yet armor weaker. And I we don't have to ask which one I prefer. Obviously,
Obviously.
I'm a harder to hit, more nominal on the hit point side. So I don't know why specifically they made the change. There is, and and this has been true of all Dungeons and Dragons since first edition, the three books in the little box I've got to set up there. Since that
Mhm.
came out, there has been a power curve increase, and we can actually see that whenever you're ready, Tim. I actually have the original D&D Owl Bear as it was in Supplement One Greyhawk. If you want to go back that far, I have that data point here, but
Well,
you can clearly see a slow ramping up of power. Why they made him easier to hit but tougher to kill, I don't know.
well,
Designed as
that doesn't. I mean, yeah. I guess okay if you want to go that route, that works. The other thing that we'll get to in a minute is it's on the next page, but is they changed a few other things about how many of them you find at a time, and also some other stuff. But the thing that really bothers me is this is the one that got me was the special attack, right? Under the third edition rules and previous to that, Owlbear's got three attacks. You got an attack with the beak, an attack with the claws, and a hug attack, a potential for a hug attack. And the hug
Mhm.
attack is really specific, right? And it's really nasty and it's really something to be avoided at all costs because here's this thing giving you a hug. You can't attack back. You've got to wait for your party to come rescue you. They didn't necessarily change. I mean, the damage from attack on the hug and I'm sorry on the beak and the claws went from a 1 to 6 and a 1 to 6, from a 1d10 and a 2d8. So they kind of changed it, and it looks like they're sort of trying to incorporate the hug into the claws, maybe. But the hug attack was so specific that it bothers me because if I get a beak and a claw attack, I can still attack back. But the thing
Mhm.
about the hug attack that was so deadly when it comes to these things is once it gets you in its arms and it's hugging you, let's say you're a fighter, a magic user, or somebody else who has to use their hands, you can't really move. You're constricted, right? That's the end for you, and you got to depend on somebody to come along and text and save you, and that's gone. He forgot how to hug. It's just completely missing from fifth edition. Um, and where did it go? I looked all through the manual in every which way I could think of, and I didn't see it in there anywhere. Uh, I don't understand why they've done away with that. That to me makes little to no sense. Other than having been a victim to a hug attack before, I'm like, okay, maybe they wanted to make it easier to kill the owlbear and easier to survive the attack, maybe. Um,
I don't know. I don't know. And I think that's a terrible thing that they would have done that.
yeah, it's gone. But this, I do kind of like one thing. This is the third edition page. This is all you get to know about Owlbear versus the fifth edition page. And one of the things I like about this is it does say the owlbear, the horrible owlbear, it actually describes it as a horrible owlbear, is
Mhm.
probably the result of genetic experimentation by some insane wizard. And then over here, you actually see a quote about somebody, lambasting that insane wizard, which got added to fifth edition. But the other thing is, if they're encountered, it tells you down here in this third paragraph on the part on the right, if they're encountered in their lair, there's a 25% chance there's eggs. There's 80% chance, there's a chance there's some young ones. You also find that there's a chance there might be multiple ones in there. You find all kinds of stuff out about them. Um, and you even find out sort of their weight and some other stuff about them. Over here on the left, you get more sort of backstory and lore, which is interesting that you don't get in the third edition, but then you've made the owlbear kind of weaker and cuter, I guess, which kind of, you know, makes it kind of strange. You can actually have them as companions, which doesn't make any sense to me as an owlbear victim in the past. So when you have these sort of changes, I don't understand what the goal here was, other than to make the attack more survivable. And maybe that was it. They're trying to level it so that you actually have a better chance of surviving. But they definitely sort of made a little problem here, or at least a little bit of a shift. If you're used to that hug attack, it's just completely gone. Which to me, it was kind of cool, kind of a neat little thing as a attack to have that out there. So you know why they changed all that, I don't get. You want to pull up that early sort of that
Yeah, yeah.
first version you
We,
had?
we can take a look at that real quick here.
Yeah,
And for I just want to touch on this real quick in case you guys are curious. If you've never seen these before, we have uh owl bears. They are third from the left, but this is where some of the classic and weirder D&D monsters came from. You can see there's a rust monster up front, left front, and center front. We have, of course, the Bullet or Bulette, depending on who you talk to. And then, of course, there's the owl bear. These came from a five and dime store in Lake Geneva. Gary bought a baggie of plastic dinosaurs, injection molded plastic dinosaurs from Hong Kong, and threw them out on the table and said, "This is a rust monster. It eats your armor. This is a Bulette. It digs underground and eats halflings. This is an owl bear. It's a horrible combination of an owl and a bear." And it was just, Gary literally just grabbed something off of the toy store, a toy aisle shelf, and then the next day they were in his D&D game. So that's that's the origin there. But
creative,
to
actually. It's an interesting way to come up with the monsters. Like just run out to the local toy shop and see what's laying around, right?
it
So,
is, it is. So let me see if I can bring this up here.
but the
We're gonna
it's that lack of hug attack that really kind of is getting to me. And I get that games evolve and games change, but you know, and we're talking about a company that did regender somebody in a painting, but this one makes no sense to me. Why go to the level of detail of just taking out a type of attack that a monster has when you got a monster manual that's, you know, a quarter inch or a third of an inch thick, full of other monster choices? Why pick on the owlbear, man?
I don't know. I mean, if we look in supplement one Greyhawk,
Mhm.
the this is the first ever listing for the owl bear, and I'll show you guys what the owl bear originally looked like here. But of course, creatures of horrid visage and disposition, owl bears will attack whatever they see and fight to the death. They
Mhm.
deliver a hug just as a werebear, for example, as well as great damage from beak, tooth, and claw. A large male will stand 8 feet tall, weigh 1,500 pounds, and have claws over 2 inches long. Bodies are furry, tending towards feathers over the cranial region, and the skin is very thick. So even back in OD&D days, even back in OD&D days, we had the hug attack, and
Mhm.
that is what an owl that is the first ever illustration of an owl bear. I guess when Gary was talking to Greg Bell, he didn't have the Chinosaur on him, so we get kind of a woodsy owl meets gentle Ben look there.
See, I've never actually seen that. So that actually, to me, looks like closer to the fifth E version of
Yeah,
an
yeah.
owlbear than anything else. So that's cool that you had that, because I've never actually seen that, and I like it because I thought it looked different to me from the third E version and the fourth E version, and the fifth E version looked like it was sort of going in a different direction. But it looks like what they did was they went backwards and paid homage to this version,
Yeah, so
which that's cool.
OD&D, yeah, OD&D had the kind of woodsy owl meets gentle Ben look.
Mhm.
We had the Chinosaur back when AD&D rolled in, and
Mhm.
that one actually kept for a while. This is the first illustration I ever saw of an owl bear. This is from Keep on the Borderlands, and to me, this is what an owl bear looks like, and I absolutely love this one.
Mhm.
The late Jim Rosloff's illustration is just the pen and ink work. Really, we're not doing it justice here with a video camera, but
Mhm.
grab a PDF copy of Keep on the Borderlands if you want to see, in my opinion, the best looking owl bear illo out there with respect to the late Dave Sutherland and the late Jim Rosloff. I personally think that one is the best one, but
But go back to that for a second. So
all right.
the thing I like about this picture is, yeah, the pen and ink is always kind of interesting because some of these guys are so talented. They can do stuff with pen and ink I can't do with Photoshop in a week to work, right? I mean,
Right, right.
these guys can do stuff on a bar napkin I couldn't do in my life. But the thing I like about this is it shows you that owlbear is not a sissy, right? Owlbear is not something
No.
you're going to walk in by yourself and go, "Hey, I think I can take it." Right? You better be a crazy high level character to take on an owlbear alone. And I'm going to stress the word crazy. Crazy, comma high level, not crazy high level.
Right.
Um, because these things are you get attack from the claws, you get attack from the beak, you got the hug attack, and look how big that thing is. It's like Mongo from Blazing Saddles. Don't shoot it; you'll only make it mad, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
not to be trifled with.
Yeah. And here's the interesting thing about the owl bear, and I think with all the florid language in fifth edition's description, they miss something important. They miss two key important things. The owl bear is neutral, which
Mhm.
means it really doesn't give a damn for fighting for chaos and evil and that sort of thing. It wants to eat and be left alone and make little owl bears. That's all it wants to do. But also, even though its intelligence is low, it is intelligent. It's no dumber than the average peasant as
Mhm.
far as the AD&D system for characteristics go. It's low intelligence, so it's going to have a 7 or 8. That means it can potentially converse in a couple of languages. Um, the owl bear is it is always hungry and it's always ill-tempered. So it's essentially like living next door to Nick Papadopoulos, who's got that Saturn up on bricks. And oh my God, if I don't get parts for this water pump, I'm never going to hear the end of it from my wife. And just a stream of foul language. That's Nick. That's the owl bear.
Oddly
Um,
specific example there. Um,
well, I if the shoe fits, wear it. But the owl bear is
well, so in fifth edition, I think they
it
make it
can
stupider
kind of
because
be
it's an
reasoned
intelligence
with.
of three. So in fifth edition, it's sort of stupider. They made an intelligence of three.
Well,
Uh,
that's a mistake in my opinion. The owl bear, it can be reasoned with, and if you look, they kind of touch on this in fifth edition with saying you might get one as a companion, but in AD&D, the eggs and young are valuable on the open market, which
yes.
means they can be raised and trained. The adults probably not so much, but if you happen to do something with mom and dad owl bear and you get the chicks and the eggs, they can be trained to be guards, circus attractions, what have you.
Yeah, the eggs
Uh,
are 2,000 gold pieces, and the 50% young, 50% grown and down are worth 5,000 on the open market.
yeah, so
So
you've got to be willing to get risk. You've got to be willing to risk getting beaked or hugged to death. But if you pull it off and you get
mhm,
the young, you've got a hell of a treasure there.
mhm. Yeah, and it could be an interesting thing to have as a companion following you around because if you want something on your side, and owlbear is probably it, as we learned in the movie, right? Having an owlbear on your team's not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea. And to clarify, I wanted to give a little bit of the science, the game science, to your viewers on that hug attack that Tim is fixated. I don't know why Tim's fixated on the hug attack. I mean, it's
Because it
just
killed me.
a friendly owl bear gesture. Now I didn't. You guys, I put forth the gambit and you guys seized it. But anyway, so this is straight from the text. This is Gary's wording on it. The owl bear attacks with its two great claws, 2 inches long, on large males. Its snapping beak and then grasps a victim and squeezes and bites it to death. If it scores a paw hit of 18 or better with either of its forelimbs, that's not both, that's either, the owl bear has dragged the victim to itself, and the opponent will take an additional 2 to 16 hit points of damage from the hug, that melee round, and every melee round thereafter until the owl bear is unalived. Note that if the armor class of an opponent is such that an 18 is insufficient to hit, the hug is not effective and no damage is taken. So basically, what that means is, so let's go back to our fun loving bunch over here in the Borderlands. Let's say Guy McSword raised over on the far right. Let's say he takes that paw hit and I roll as the dungeon master a 20.
Mhm.
Well, he's going to be crushed for 2 to 16 points of damage. And in the meantime, the owl bear can continue to beat Joe Battleaxe. And if he knocks Joe down or grabs him and drags him forward and starts crushing him, the best thing Halfling McFurryfoot on the far left can do is leave.
That's cool.
Because at that point, his friends are toast. Because the
Yeah,
owlbear can hold on to them and turn around and continue to beak. They're bad juju if you're on the wrong side of them.
yeah, and that's my point is we took it from that to sort of a standard I get two attacks and you get two attack. We took it from a monster you just don't want to mess with to one that is okay, you can kind of mess with it, right? And that to me is sort of doing it a disservice. They're still, nasty creatures, don't get me wrong. They're still deadly, but they're not as crazy as they were. So I guess fifth edition brought it down a little bit so it's more survivable maybe. Whereas first through third was like, okay, half you could have a total party kill here. You can suffer a TPK because you found two owlbears hunting together and they're protecting their young and they're pissed off now, right?
Mhm.
Whereas in the newer edition, maybe you don't suffer a TPK quite as quickly or as often when you come across them. Maybe that was the goal. But to me, I think this particular monster, yes, it's still in the game. Yes, I like the artwork because it kind of pays homage to that first one, which I'd never seen. I didn't really even, that was cool, Bill. Thank you for pulling that up.
You're
But
welcome.
the changes, I'm not really a big fan of. I mean, Owlbear's still cool. I still want to use it, but I'm going to miss the hug, you know? And it might be one of those things as a dungeon master, I might slide into a fifth edition game where they still have the ability to hug because it,
I would.
yeah, I mean it yes, it's out of the manual, but I still have okay, that's the player's handbook, but I still have somewhere around here because I pulled it out. I've got I still have, the older that one still works, right? That's the player's handbook again. Shoot. Somewhere around here I have the monster manual that I pulled that
No,
picture
I
out of.
get what you're saying though. I
Yeah.
mean, there's nothing preventing you, and I think it's incumbent on the
There it
dungeon
is.
master to uh, to do things like that, to tweak your game, to put things like that in. If you like things from other editions, for goodness sakes, incorporate them in your game. There, there's no edict that says you can never have an AD&D Owl Bear in fifth edition.
Mhm.
Quite the contrary, I think you should have an AD&D Owl Bear in fifth edition. Give it armor class 15 and or rather 17 instead of armor class 13 and make it a threat again.
Mhm.
Make it a threat again, make that hug scary.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of cool in the movie where the owlbear threw the red wizard into the wall. That was neat. But I think hugging the red wizard would have been much more fun. Yeah, it would have
Yeah.
been nice to have it just be like, that's the end of this wizard. We're gonna give it a nice chiropractic treatment and snap their spine right in half, right?
Yeah. Let me give
Uh,
you an adjustment.
we're just gonna give you a little adjustment here. We're,
Yeah,
we're
I'm
gonna
giving you
bill
an
your insurance
adjustment
for
for
this. I feel better. Oh, I broke my toy. Um,
flops backwards over his arms.
Exactly. So I'm going to keep digging through these monster manuals to see what else I can find that's different. I'm sure there's other stuff. This was sort of a first for one off for me, but uh, Bill, thank you for taking the time to come through and walk through this. I think that's interesting. I'm going to do a deep dive on beholders next. I've got two that I want to go through because there's a bunch of monsters that actually get encountered quite often, and they're far more deadly than people give them credit for. Sort of the routine monsters that show up in the game, but there's sort of three or four or five that get a lot of special attention from sort of people talking and T-shirts and whatever else.
Mhm.
And those are beholders, dragons, obviously, which is whole set I don't really want to get into because it's just there's too much of it. But I want to go through beholders and mimics and see how those have evolved over the years because I think those get a lot of T-shirt space, but they don't necessarily get a lot of gameplay the way that the sort of merchandising for them would have you believe. Mostly because beholders are just one nasty group of thing you never want to come across, right? It's just not friendly. And mimics are, of course, you never win a surprise attack against a mimic, like ever. So, but I think I want to do a deep dive on those too. So I may lean on you again, Bill, to do one of those maybe in a week or so. But um, uh,
Always happy to help.
I really do enjoy doing these dives with you. So click like, subscribe, follow wherever you happen to see me. You can find Bill on Twitter and YouTube. I think and Facebook. I think you're on Facebook as well. And
Mhm.
I'll link to many of those as I can in the description. But thank you everybody, and have a great day and avoid the hug.